So my first case was Darnel. He was a 60-year-old male with Parkinson's disease. He has had it for 6 years. He had been referred to OT by his physician because his physician was worried about his functional independence, functional abilities within his home. He was currently living at home with his wife and his 2 teenage sons in a 2-story apartment, so he had to get upstairs to get home. He said, quote, getting around and using his hands is getting worse. Had a history of depression, so his quality of life wasn't great. He was currently medicated, used to own his own cab, struggled with a lot of functional ability, and said he really couldn't use his hands. So some things I found around my house that I thought I could help him with were this ketchup bottle thing, cookie cutter, 20 questions. This thing, Alexa, now it's going to talk to me.
Sorry, I'm not sure about that.
Mr. Monkey Man, these clamp things, and then like a pill bottle or cups organizers. So, starting with, I guess this. So, he liked to cook. He never was a cook, but he enjoyed cooking, usually cooked all the family meals. So I thought kind of incorporating this would kind of bring back that occupation, kind of rely around that. I was thinking maybe you could do a lot of different things with this. You could either kind of work on that fine motor skills, but doesn't need that, doesn't need to kind of isolate the digits with the Parkinson's that he had would make that difficult. So kind of using more of a gross grasp. He could either squeeze it and suck water up and move it to another different bowl, or you could fill it with water and food coloring and squirt it on paper and kind of make an artwork. I thought that could kind of maybe be kind of an increase in quality of life thing. If he's doing that, kind of making an art, something he can produce and see, might have a little bit of meaning to him and his family. Something he can kind of show off, which I think would be nice for him as well. Kind of sticking on the cooking theme, I thought the cookie cutter, I have a bunch downstairs, but I just brought this one, could either, if you make dough or even use Play-Doh, you could even use I don't have a rolling pin, but muscle roller, kind of the same thing. Rolling out, if you have a rolling pin for it, being able to kind of increase that range of motion while rolling out either Play-Doh or real dough, getting that strength and endurance up, and then the sensory input if he's actually playing with the dough, and then being able to cut out the dough, just being able to push it down into the dough and make the little cutouts with the cookie cutter would be appropriate. Or even if you don't have dough, even just maybe having him put it on a piece of paper and hold it however you can, and then tracing it and cutting it out, kind of adapting it to whatever needs he has. 20 questions. It doesn't, his cognition wasn't stated, but I thought his day is pretty boring. Not boring. He sits at home all day while his kids are at work, or his kids are at school and his wife's at work, so he doesn't really do much throughout the day because he can't really move around and get around. So I thought this might be something you could give to him or recommend he purchase for $10 at Walmart. And it kind of gives him something to do throughout the day, kind of keep his cognition up, thinking, just get those neurons working within the brain, and something just fun he can do throughout the day you could give to him and recommend that he do. Another thing he mentioned that he really liked to do was read the newspaper. That was one thing he did like to continue to do. He could get outside to get it and then get it back and read it. But I was thinking as he got worse, if he couldn't get to the newspaper, maybe something like an Alexa like this, he would be able to talk to. And also, my grandpa has Parkinson's, so he has struggled using the iPhone. So kind of that voice recognition might help him too. So if he could just say, Alexa, tell me the news today.
Here's your news. In NPR News.
And then he could just kind of sit there and listen.
Live from NPR News
as
in
it comes
Washington,
through.
I'm Janine Herbst. The governor of Michigan says bankruptcy isn't an option for her
So it kind of goes through the headlines. Alexa, stop. It goes through the headlines of the news article, which would give him kind of that independence to be able to listen to it and still get his news, not from the same source of the newspaper, but being able to still feel like he can get that from somewhere else. And there's a lot of other things. You can ask the weather, play music, get recipes if he is still be able to cook, tell him a story if he's into reading books, stuff like that. You can also make call. You can set it up to make calls or control your lights. So if he has trouble with light switches throughout the house, a lot of those require a lot of fine motor. If him and his wife are willing to set it up to be able to control the lights, that's something he can do and maintain that independence with, as well as call his wife if he can't operate a phone. With the being able to isolate his digits and calling, he can say, "Hey, call my wife," and it'll ring it up, and you can talk right through there, which I thought was something that would be really cool. This was just kind of something fun I saw. So I got this for Christmas a couple years ago. So the monkey has these little finger things. So I think it might be kind of difficult for him to isolate his digits and put it in. But if the therapist could help him put the fingers in, and then maybe if you put a bucket across the way, he's got some springy arms. So if you go, and then you like shoot it. He used to make a noise. But you could put like the bucket and have him shoot the monkey towards the bucket and try and get it in the bucket, just to kind of get that strength, and also working on that kind of fine motor isolation and being able to do that for as much as he can. There it goes. So, lastly, these two things, kind of clips, I saw these and thought they'd be good for him to kind of work on it. They're not too occupation based. I guess you could make them occupation based. Another thing I found was kind of like a pill bottle if you want it. He is on medication, so maybe that medication management is a concern. If you wanted to fill it with Tic Tacs or something and have him use his pincer grasp, or use maybe a sweeping grasp, like off the table, to get that pill in his hand, and then being able to place it in the pin. Just kind of working on getting his hands moving, as well as making sure that he's cognitively aware and knows what pill to take when, and other stuff like that. You could also maybe use the clips to have him pick up the pills and put it in the pill bottle as well. Just something else than just moving it from one close line to the other. That's not really occupation based, so you kind of want to put that occupation there. So yeah, those are some things I saw around the house. Again, just kind of get him moving and keep him moving as much as he can. You know, his condition is just going to progress, but you want to keep him moving as much as you can and keep him as engaged as you can to hopefully increase that quality of life that he is kind of struggling with. So you want to keep his morale up and hopefully have a little fun with him as well. Thanks.